So we are doing this case study on tariff and protectionism for Edexcel economics. So now the case study says in 2014, the US government announced that it would impose tariff worth several hundred millions of dollars on import of steel. Now, import of steel is a raw material, right? Steel is a raw material. And if government imposes tariff on steel, this means that the cost of production will rise. And once cost of production rises, the supply level will fall and overall price in the economy will rise. Now, the US Commerce Department imposed tariff of 16% on import from South Korea of steel pipe and tubes used for oil drilling. Now the percentage increase in tariff was of 16%, which was used for oil drilling, and the tariff are imposed on steel pipes and tubes. The department claimed that these products are being dumped in US markets. So now we have this concept of dumping, which means that the product is sold to an international market at a lower cost, below cost, right? So the steel was dumped in US market. So the products were being dumped in the US market, being sold at unfair prices. The US imposed even higher duties up to 118%, 118%, or on 9 other countries, which means that once US imposed a tariff of 118% on steel and this steel pipe and tubes, this will increase the price level by more than double. All right. So the US government is trying to match the price level of their local market so that the consumers, they don't move to another market, they do not switch to another international product. So the 9 countries the US imposed tariff included Thailand, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Taiwan, who were all accused of dumping in the country. Any problem up till now, Isa?
No.
All right. It was hoped that tariff would help the US steel industry by raising prices and protecting hundreds of jobs that had been threatened by cheap imports. So the main objective of government is to protect jobs of local industry. Steel workers in the USA had been holding demonstrations around the country to demand the government to do something about cheap imports. So USA had been holding demonstrations. They are protesting just to increase this price level of their dumped products and to avoid this cheap import entering the US market. However, some industry analysts said that the tariff would only have short-term impact, which is true. This was because of the worldwide overproduction of steel caused by the slowdown in the Chinese economy and the softening of the US gas boom. Shale gas production uses a lot of steel. So since there is a rise in demand of steel to produce that shale gas that was produced in US, people knew that US will need steel. All right, that is the reason why they were trying to sell as much steel as they could. Just after announcement by the USA, South Korea said it would take action against USA in order to protect its 818 million of exports of steel products to the country, which clearly tells you about the concept of retaliation. And South Korea is retaliating. South Korean officials said that the US steel producers charge higher than market price for South Korean products. So again, they have their own problems going on with the US, that US is charging more than market price for South Korean products. They have increased the price level. The South Korean Trade Ministry said it will come up with the appropriate countermeasures based on legal reviews and discussions with the local industry when commenting on the US trade barriers. Official also added that steel is a tariff-free item in the US South Korean trade according to WTO rules. South Korea was considering whether ask the WTO World Trade Organization to investigate the claims or press charges in the US court. Now, according to the tariff agreement, the trade agreement between South Korea and US, steel was a product which should not have been charged, in which the tariff should not have been involved, right? So there should be no tariff according to the trade agreement between US and South Korea. But the US, they have imposed tariff on the steel, on the production, the steel coming from South Korea, which means that they have violated the agreement that was between South Korea and US, right? So South Korea went to WTO to investigate the claim, or so that they could sue US in the US court. One of the dangers of imposing trade barrier is that an all-out trade war breaks out between nations. This is where a country retaliates to the imposition of trade barriers by imposing some of their own. This can then lead to further rounds of more severe trade restrictions, and eventually trade between nations stops completely. This will obviously have negative consequences for both parties because the trading will stop. In this case, the argument comes just a couple of years after the US and South Korea signed a bilateral trade agreement. Bilateral trade agreement means that there is an agreement between South Korea and US in which they have both provided their terms and conditions and they agree upon it. Now, what is the difference between quota and tariff? Now, quota is a physical limit that is imposed on imports. Yeah, please go
physical
on.
limit of imports allowed to the country, and the tariff is just tax on it.
Tariff is a tax on import. Perfect. How might the dumping of steel products by foreigner companies impact on US steel producers? Now we have everything written here. Why government imposes tariff on products that are being dumped in a certain economy, because this will increase unemployment in US. Now you have to link it with the case, right? So this will increase unemployment in US. Local businesses might run out of business. They might run out of sales. They might not be able to compete with the international steel coming into the US. They might not be able to produce that level of goods and services, right? So you can talk about it like that. It will also it will also increase balance of trade deficit. It will ruin the current account of US. So this is how you have to link your answer and you have to explain this concept. Everything clear?
Yeah.
Use a supply and demand diagram to show the effect of imposing a tariff in a market. Now it's very simple. If we draw a diagram, you can just look here. This is price on y-axis. This is quantity on x-axis. First, you have to show basic equilibrium. That is like this. Your x-man, supply, demand, equilibrium E. This is the current quantity in US and this is the current price level in US, right? Now,
Yeah.
if there is a tariff imposed on goods and services, this means that the cost of production is rising. And once cost of production rises, this means that the supply level will fall in the economy and supply will shift leftwards from S to S1, equilibrium E to E1. There will be a new equilibrium quantity, whereas the equilibrium price level will rise. All right. Equilibrium price will rise and equilibrium quantity will fall. This is how you have to explain this diagram. Describe A, one advantage, and B, one disadvantage of using subsidies as a trade barrier. Now we studied this concept in very detail in this subsidies portion. There are numerous benefits of subsidies, that this will reduce the cost of production and this will increase supply in the economy. Further, it will also benefit the local consumers as well. Apart from international competition, you can talk about a lot of things. So these are all the benefits that are written for subsidies. But when we talk about drawbacks, this is the drawback, that there is opportunity cost involved. See, opportunity cost involved. Same money could have been invested elsewhere. So this might also make other governments or the international government a bit angry, because subsidy is also one of the measures of protectionism, right? So they might retaliate as well. So this is how you need to explain your answer. Now, question number 5. Consider the possible effects of the US imposing tariff on steel imports. Make a clear judgment in your evaluation. Now, the possible effects of US, you have to give benefits and drawbacks of tariffs, which means that you will first start by defining tariff, what is tariff. Then you will explain the benefits of tariff, that they are very general benefits, that it will increase employment, it will switch the consumers to domestically manufactured goods, This will increase balance of trade surplus, and this is how you will expect. This will increase GDP in the economy. This will increase real income in the economy. However, if we talk about drawbacks, this might lead to retaliation, like in this case where the US and South Korea, they are fighting. So you can talk about the retaliation case. You can further talk about that the local producers might not be able to provide that quality that international producers give. You can talk about inflation. How will increase in export and decrease in import lead to inflation? You know the formula: AD is equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, right? Now, if government imposes tariff on import, this means that my import will fall. And once my import falls, my aggregate demand rises, which leads to increase in price level. All right. So this increase in price level will result in inflation. You can talk about inflation like that. Everything clear?
Yeah, so far.
So in the end, you need to give your clear judgment, your conclusion that if tariff is beneficial for the economy or not. And you can always go for it. Always depends upon the current economic situation of the country. And if the country is not involved in any sort of trade agreement between the participants, now this is how you will start your conclusion. Now it all depends upon the current economic state, that whether the US's current account is in surplus or deficit. If it's in deficit, then tariff is probably the best. Why? Because this will reduce imports and will convert balance of trade deficit into a surplus. All right. But you can always go for something here like yes, it is always beneficial, or no, it is not beneficial. So it all depends on you. But the better conclusion here is it depends upon the current economic state. Everything clear?
Yeah.
All right.